How you guys doing? Good. Well, we've got your most exciting conversation of the day, Washington and politics. I will say, for those of us who see each other here quite regularly, I wanted to wear a different outfit so you know that it's not just the same Groundhog Day talking about the same topic. But I do actually, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here at this time, at this moment. I'm excited to be here with Congressman Perlmutter and with my colleague David Mangone. And I want to give you some good news. I want to give you a little bit of optimism. And so we're going to start with the age-old question in cannabis. What's different today from the last time we had this conversation in Chicago about safer banking? David Mangone, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So good morning, everybody. And if you attended the conference last year, you may remember that we had some excitement heading into a Senate banking markup. Fast forward a year later, since then, we have had a Congressional Budget Office score on the safe banking bill, a Government Accountability Office reaching out to stakeholders in the industry and service providers. And I say those two things first. They may not sound exciting, but if you're going to vote no on this bill, on a process standpoint, saying, oh, you didn't follow regular order, oh, you didn't go through all of the technical checking the boxes, it's a lot easier to hide behind that kind of argument rather than having to vote no on a very popular policy in your state. So beyond that, we have also some pretty significant endorsements and language in favor of safe banking from both presidential candidates. So when Kamala Harris was in the Senate, she was a co-sponsor of safe banking. Her team has been very responsive in terms of their support of it. And then you had President Trump, Truth on Truth Social, his support for not only safe banking, but also legalization and Amendment 3 in Florida. So what that means is we're heading into an election cycle where we have both major party tickets in favor of legalization, but also in favor of smaller reforms. And so if you look at where we were a year ago from that Senate banking markup, you now have Chairman Brown filming videos at dispensaries as he heads into his re-election campaign. You have Leader Schumer talking about this bill on a pretty regular basis. So it is not Groundhog Day. We've had a lot of really positive developments over the last year. And I think I'm really excited about the lame duck session.
I'm glad, because David Mangone doesn't get excited about very much less a lame duck session. So here we are, 28 days from
28 days later, the election.
From election day. Sounds like a bad movie. But nevertheless, here we are. And I think, as we all sit on the precipice of the unknown on so many levels, there are some, not predictors, but certainly some factors that will inform how we strategize during a lame duck. So Congressman Perlmutter, help us understand what that post-lame duck landscape looks like in Washington. And let's start with, I'm going to make it easier for you. Let's forget about the White House for a moment, and let's start with whether or not the D's take the House, the R's take the Senate, and kind of what those dynamics are. And let's put it in the context of how that helps our chances for safer banking and lame duck.
All right. Colorado, we're going to start voting early next week. I don't know about other states around here when your voting begins, but we're a mail-in ballot state. So everybody in Colorado gets a ballot, gets it about 4 weeks in advance of the election. And so voting starts next week for us. So we're talking about a lame duck, but we're in a place right now where you shape what the lame duck looks like, because it's going to be a very tight election, from the presidential race to the United States Senate to the House of Representatives and some state races across the country. So what I want you all to do, because this is a democracy where we each get to say how we want our government to look come the next year. So you've got a lot of responsibility here in this conference to shape what this lame duck's going to look like. So if I were a betting man, and sometimes I am, if I were a betting man, I would bet the ultimate thing is going to be a Democratic White House, a Republican Senate, and a Democratic House. And so starting with that, which is, I think, how I would predict. Now, it certainly could change a lot in the next 28 days. I see sort of the groundwork because of this split government for a lame duck to actually get some things done that ordinarily might not happen if one party sweeps all three offices, all three institutions. So if it's as I predict, I can see the Leader Schumer and Sherrod Brown really pushing to get safe banking finished in the Senate, which is where it's gotten stuck for the last 5 years. Now, we're head and shoulders above where we were a few years ago, having it pass the Senate Banking Committee. And as David said, the scores have all done, the process is finished, the votes are there. And they've just kind of held back. A lame duck with the order that I've suggested really moves the Senate, Schumer and Brown, to push the bill through. Then you got the House. So the House has been a little, it's a different House than the one I served in, where we passed the bill 7 times. There's going to be a little more reluctance, and there's going to have to be some deal-making done. And the deal-making still probably involves crypto. And that's sort of a big question mark right now because Patrick McHenry, who is the chairman of the Financial Services Committee, I served with him for 16 years, he's retiring at the end of this year. And his baby is to get crypto over the finish line. He's got some ideas. And so there's going to have to be a deal made in that respect. So I can see this getting out, and I can see the Biden White House particularly wanting to just finish this subject, signing this thing. There's a lot of combinations and permutations. We can go through a bunch of them, but I figured I'd start with the one I think is most likely. You want me to go through all the other combinations and permutations?
I think it's worthwhile
Right.
because this is a group that's paying attention, and good news is you're sophisticated enough to go into the nuance. So let's take another ideation, and see what that looks like.
Okay, if either party sweeps, then I think everything is held until the next cycle, because then you can precisely shape the legislation the way that particular party would want to see it. And Democrats might want more if we were to sweep, more in terms of justice and equity and those kinds of things, making sure there's expungement and things like that. So broaden kind of the social justice element of this thing. Republicans get it. There's going to be a lot of interest in making sure that you can have cross-border types of transactions, more Wall Street availability for lending and securities transactions. So I think everything gets pushed until next session. If it's some other combination, I think again, if it's a split government of any kind, it pushes towards getting this resolved this year, because it's been done in proper order. It's sitting in the Senate where it needs to pass. And then, the senators might say, well, we're a little worried about the House. My response to Senator Schumer when he said, well, will the House be able to take this up? I said, just get it the hell out of the Senate, and then let the House worry about what it's going to do. So, and I did say that to him, actually. So, anyway, those are my predictions.
Well, I think that's helpful as we are orienting ourselves on strategy, because as the lobbying effort in Washington on behalf of the industry, you start with a strategy in month 1, and as things shift and get closer to the election, we have to shift and be nimble. We were recently on the Hill doing 2 briefings, I guess a week and a half ago, David, specifically around other trade associations and other interests in safe banking. Can you talk a little bit about what the 19 staff offices on the House side and the 22 offices on the Senate side, what their reaction was and what their need to know is regarding what we have to do as an industry in terms of partnering with ancillary business organizations that are not cannabis but are interested in safe banking, but also what information they still need to be motivated to get this done?
Yeah, and so for these briefings, we had former Deputy Attorney General James Cole, the American Bankers Association expert in money laundering, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, head of their cannabis practice, and then we had a social equity licensee from Illinois. And the impact that briefing had, I had staff talking to me afterwards, texting me that said, these are the voices that we need to hear, this holistic approach, whether it's a service provider, whether it's an operator. We had names in that room that have always been opposed to safe banking. Senator Grassley sent some of his staff, the senior senator from Iowa. He has long been opposed to this bill, but the willingness to get educated from some of these additional service providers really shows that even the most ardent opponents of this bill are, I think, softening up to the prospects. And again, to the point of now that there aren't any process challenges remaining, it's really just having to come to terms with how you're going to vote on the actual policy. And this bill, and this has been a quote from a Republican senator who's currently serving, is just good governance. It's not political. It's not something that is controversial. It is just good governing. And so that is the hope that is what we're moving towards. But I think we'll get to this a little bit later. Even if you are not plant touching directly, there is a role for you to support this bill. There's a role for you to engage with your elected officials.
Can I jump in at that point?
Yes,
so,
please do.
And when I was talking about now is when you have a chance to shape the lame duck and obviously shape how government goes forward. You know, what we look like come January of 2025. So just little audience participation. I want to see how many of you that are looking at your phones right now are listening to my question. But how many of you have, within the last 6 months, called either a member of the House or your senator to say, hey, we want to get something done on rescheduling or on safe banking? Please raise your hand. All right, pretty good.
Not
Anybody?
enough.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna work on that a little bit right now. All right. How many have you called your state legislators on a subject involving your business? All right, that's a little bit better. All right. Now my question is, in the next 28 days, how many of you are going to reach out to either your senator, a member of the House, or your state legislators to see if something else can't be done to boost the cannabis industry at a state or federal level? Raise your hands. All right, well, we've got some ideas as to how you can, we're going to make it easier for you to do that. Because, this is a participation sport, ladies and gentlemen. Politics is participation. You don't participate, you get kicked. And if you do participate, good things happen. Sometimes it takes a long damn time. This thing's taken way too long. Way too long. But if you stay in there and you're persistent, you make a difference. And so, I don't know who any of you are voting for. Obviously, I'm going to vote a pretty straight Democratic ticket. That's what I'm going to do. Cory Gardner's not here. He can't refute me, so that's fine. I don't mind a Republican not being here. But you got to play a role. And, it's easy to go about worrying about the numbers of your business and, how many employees you got today, what you're going to sell, whatever. But unless you take charge of your own future by participating in this election, and that means voting, but it means also calling and knocking and explaining why you think the way you do. That'll make a big difference come the lame duck and come next year.
I think that's fantastic. And we were going to do this more at the end, but I think I'm going to switch the order up a little bit to build on your momentum, if that's okay.
Sorry, I got ahead.
No, it's okay. I do want to leave a little bit of time to talk about rescheduling, but I don't mind doing this now because I actually want to give you a really good excuse to be on your phone. So a couple of months ago, we decided that Benzinga has a role in the next 28 days. National Cannabis Roundtable, the United States Cannabis Council, and the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp joined forces to launch this campaign. On your tables, you will see a sticker that says, "Action is dope." And underneath it, there is a pound sign and the number's 250. I have an ask of you. The number of you who all thank me and thank our team for doing our work, we love it. Great. Now I have an ask of you, and you don't even have to write a check for it. I want you to dial sometime today, pound 250. It is going to take you to your senior senator's office, and you're either going to leave a message or you're going to press a number and you're going to talk to somebody and you're going to tell them what you want. You're then going to get a text. You'll click on that link, and that text will take you to all of your delegation with some language to tell them that you want safer banking. Now, for many of you, you are irritated and frustrated that this has taken so damn long, and I do not blame you. But I ask you to look into your life and your business and look at the arc of progress. And if you think things take long in things you have control, imagine how much longer they take in Washington. We cannot give up. We will not give up, and you are a part of our success. So in addition to you doing this, I'd like you to ask a friend to do it, because I brought 1,000 of these stickers. There are 1,500 people at Benzinga, and I'm going to know how many of you guys did this. And next time I come back, if it's a low number, I'm going to kvetch a little bit. I'm a Jewish mother. I know how to bitch and make you feel guilty. Don't ask me to help you in Washington if you don't want to help us in Washington. And we need your help in Washington, and getting you activated is helping us in Washington. So now I'm going to ask again. How many of you are going to reach out to your damn members of Congress sometime today or tomorrow? Can you just indulge me and raise your hands, please? Okay, thank you very much. Seriously, I mean, it's a little, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic a little bit, but I don't know how to explain how important it is that your voices are there, because we can only amplify so much.
And I will add to, congressional staff logs every call they get and the subject matter and what the constituent said. They do not log Twitter. They do not care. You can tweet at your members all day long. It is never read. They have to log calls. It is part of their job description.
And I'm going to just add one more thing. So I was out knocking doors, precinct in Colorado. This was a number of years ago, and this was right before Colorado legalized. And, you know, I didn't really understand how big a subject it was, but in this one particular neighborhood, and been walking a lot, all of a sudden about 4 houses in a row said, "Where are you on, Proposition 64 or whatever number it was?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to support it." "Well, we haven't seen anything from you that says you're supporting this." So next house, same thing. I said, they get to the 4th house, I said, "What's going on here?" "Well, we all work together." And our boss said, "If any politician comes around, you got to press him." Well, then I became kind of a spokesman for the darn thing. I never planned on it, but 4 people in a row, because their business, because they had a medical marijuana establishment, said, "Look, we've got to move this forward." It makes a difference. It makes a difference when you talk to somebody. It makes a difference when your staff talks to people. So, you got to keep doing this. I was a young man before I started working on safer banking.
When did you first introduce?
And I'm not so young anymore.
When did you introduce it, Congressman Perlmutter? When did you introduce safer banking first?
2013.
So for those of you who are seeing him for the first time, this is the grandfather, the father, the godfather. The great-grandfather of safe banking.
Great-grandfather, that's what I am.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it takes everybody pushing. And you don't know what the contact is. You don't know when it's going to make the difference, but it'll make a difference.
Now that you all are starting to activate, which I'm really excited about that, I do want to talk a little bit about the impact of where we are with rescheduling as it relates to, and David, if you'll just do a quick little overview of where we are in the process, kind of what the next thing is we expect to see, and what impact we think that's going to have in Congress.
Yeah, and I'll start with the transition of stakeholder action. The rescheduling rule ended up getting over 43,000 public comments. That it's not a popularity contest. They don't, sort of count who's in favor and who's against. But I think that goes to show that when there are opportunities to meaningfully engage in DC, everyone in this room should not hesitate to do so, whether it's public comment, whether it's reaching out to your members. It's always critically important to make your voice heard. So as far as the process goes, the comment period closed back in July, and then September 30th was a deadline to request a hearing to participate in for a December 2nd hearing before an administrative law judge in December. We don't know who's participating in that hearing yet. I think there are some folks who have made some decent arguments, including, as I mentioned, Deputy Attorney General Cole. I know the Iraq-Afghanistan Veterans Association have submitted a number of researchers and scientists in the space. But likewise, so too have some opponents to this rulemaking. You see some law enforcement who have not been thrilled with the change, former DEA heads themselves, and then some Republican attorneys general. So we'll probably hear 30 days before, give or take, about who is participating in that hearing. For those of you who are looking at your calendars, 30 days before December 2nd hearing falls right before this election. So that deadline may go a little bit either way. It is not in statute, as that's when it's required. That's just kind of standard practice in administrative hearings. The good news, and I think when this hearing was scheduled after the election, there was some rightful disappointment. But I think the good news about this is, again, this is something that allows the process to unfold as it is written in statute. It significantly lowers the ability to challenge something, say under the Administrative Procedures Act, or on the process side saying, oh, there was a deficient ability to be heard. And so it's really my view that having a hearing and having an open forum that's bolstered by a very thorough 252-page recommendation from a federal agency of HHS, Health and Human Services, bolstered by 43,000 public comments, and bolstered by the long-standing research that has both been included in that analysis and has been submitted since that hearing deadline has closed. I think it's a really strong case that's going to be made that rescheduling will move forward with the appropriate science backing it.
And it's really important to have that kind of foundation laid on any rulemaking by any agency now. Some of you have heard about this case called Chevron, or that did away what's called Chevron deference. And what it's done is it's made it easier by somebody to overturn a particular rule that an agency comes up with. There's no longer deference given to the agency saying, you guys know what you're doing. So you have to have great evidence to underwrite and support rules and legislation now, or the courts are going to be more prone to reverse something. And so, again, even though it's taken time and it seems to be very, driven by some very tiny little things, got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to make sure that this rule sticks and isn't reversed by some court.
And I think, I was remarking right after the hearing notice came out, we reached out to Jim Cole, who's on our team, and Kathleen Sebelius, and their comments were, do you want it done fast, or do you want it done right, and do you want it to last? And I said, okay, we want it to last. And they said the delay, there was no actual delay, that was just something that really we, disappointed industry, kind of characterized once again in Twitter land. So we really want to correct that.
And again, I think there is this sort of specter that Donald Trump would come in and overturn this rulemaking. But now with him, being out there publicly supporting the move forward to Schedule 3 and frankly full legalization in Florida, I think it alleviates a lot of that concerns and a lot of that unknown. This rulemaking I think is going to move forward regardless of the outcome for the presidential, and that's not going to be universally true across all currently active rulemakings. But this one seems as though it's going to be one that survives regardless of what happens in the White House.
And there's still time. In theory, there is still time for this to be completed before A.G. Garland leaves his post, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It'd be very quick, but there is still time. And I think another important thing to remember is the opinions that come out of an ALJ hearing are only recommendations. They can be ultimately ignored by the Department of Justice, and we have a pretty good example of that from the late 80s. Judge Francis Young was at the DEA, said that cannabis was one of the safest substances known to man. There was no reason that it should be Schedule 1. He was ultimately overturned by his own then Department of Justice. So wrote this very great opinion. It's worth a read if you haven't read it. But we have this good precedent that says, look, a DEA law judge, either way, could say, I agree with this ruling, I don't agree with this ruling, and ultimately justice could say, thanks but no thanks.
So as we conclude, I want to thank Benzinga for their willingness and enthusiasm around supporting this campaign. It's the first time we've ever done it. So Benzinga was instrumental in their leadership. I think it's the first time it's ever been done at a conference. I want to thank my colleagues at the United States Cannabis Council and American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Michael Braunstein and Ed Conklin are outstanding partners. I know frequently there is an allegation or accusation that the leading trades do not work together. We coordinate very closely, and we have outstanding collegiality between the three of our groups. And we are working tirelessly in Washington, and we know you are working tirelessly in your businesses, and we want to thank you, because one of the things that I mentioned at CANRA is that we are all in this boat together. You are in your business boat, I'm in the policy boat to support your business. You need my help, we need your help, and we have to make a commitment to each other to stay in it and stay working and stay rowing and keep our head up. And sometimes success, as my 81-year-old dad, who is still practicing surgeon, says, sometimes success is just staying alive. And that's where we are right now. But when we win, and when we get there, it will be because of our effort. And it will teach us on what we have to do for next conversations around legalization and further reform that goes beyond safe banking and goes beyond Schedule 3 into complete reform, into decriminalization, and into full legalization. So I'm going to ask you one more time, who is willing to make a commitment? Please, please, I'd love for even more people to raise your hand. Pound 250 to reach out to your member of Congress. One more time. Senator, please. A few more folks? No? At least, if those of you who have your hands up, please ask a couple of people. We thank you so much for listening to us and engaging with us. We're around if you have questions. Thank you so much, David Mangone, for being so outstanding in Washington. Thank you so much, Ed Perlmutter, for being here. And thank you guys so much for enjoying the conversation with us.